Hey folks, Dirks Bentley here. If you've seen one of my concerts, you know I'm all about energy. Performing, recording, traveling, being a husband and a father, it's a busy life, and I need to be 100% every day. So when my battery starts running low, I grab a sugar-free, vitamin-packed 5-hour energy shot. It tastes great, and it gets me back to 100% fast. Try it. It could work for your busy life too. For more information, visit 5hourenergy.com.
Blog Talk Radio.
You follow mama's rules, gotta be a good little girl. Once you hit 18, the light turns green, wanna get wild on the world. Her and her friends are getting mad, got their own party pad. Everybody saying hell yeah, come on, it's on. It's off the chain, crazy, insane, hillbilly party with the whole damn gang, flipping out of the news, cutting loose, raising all kinds of cane. Brother, it's off the chain. There's a DJ throwing down, got a crowd dancing to the speakers cranked out in the yard. There's a whole nother bunch drinking moonshine punch, they get a little louder by the jar. Sweet little innocent child, got them all going wild. You can hear them for a country mile, finally singing their own damn song. And it's off the chain, crazy, insane, hillbilly party with the whole damn gang, slipping out of the news, cutting loose, raising all kinds of cane. Brother, it's off the chain. At 34 Brickyard Road. We've also got a 390 and a 314. We've seen parties before, but this ain't nothing like we've ever seen. It's off the chain, crazy, insane, hillbilly party with the whole damn gang, slipping out of the news, cutting loose, raising all kinds of cane. It's off the chain, crazy, insane, a hillbilly party with the whole damn gang, slipping out of the news, cutting loose, raising all kinds of cane. Brother, it's off the chain. Brother, it's off the chain. Off the chain, off the chain. Off the chain, off the chain. Off the chain, off the chain.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time here in South Florida, and for all of y'all that know it, it is Off the Chain. That was a song Off the Chain by Jamie Lee Parsons, and he's got it nailed. We are always off the chain here. I'm your host, Yvonne Mason, and I want to welcome each and every one of you to the show tonight. I know y'all get tired of me saying it's not my show, but ladies and gentlemen, it is not my show. It is your show. You're the guest, you're the listener, and because of all of y'all, we are just, I don't know where we're going, but I know that we're hitting 131,000 listeners just on this show. But you add all the other podcasts this thing goes up on, we're over 200,000 in 200 plus countries. So, yeah, we're definitely off the chain. Now, we're already booking shows into next year. This is how busy this show is. And sadly, I was involved with a company, it's Podcast Guest, and they put my show or our show in their directory, and I got all of these people that wanted to be on the show. I booked them, and three of them were no shows. So I don't know that I'm going to keep using that company because I have so many others that wait patiently to be on the show and will come on the show that I doubt very seriously I'm going to use that company again, because I don't want to hurt the ones that come on the show all the time, ask to come on the show, and then they have to wait 3 or 4 months because I'm already show. They don't call, they don't write, they don't do anything. They just don't show up. And to me, that is unprofessional, it is unethical, and it is just downright rude, crude, and socially unacceptable. So with that being said, if you want to be on the show, there's 2 ways to do it. One, you can come on as a guest. Yes, you get booked months in advance. You have to friend me on Facebook. 2, you can become a sponsor for the show. I'm not in it to get rich. I don't want to get rich. I just want to help all of you succeed. You can also reach me on Off the Chain Radio at yahoo.com. I have to start the show out with 3 of my sponsors because they've been so good to me. One of them is Diane Moat. She's an author, and she has a series of books out, and it's called the Sam Holden series. And Sam is back. She is our favorite vigilante. The 3rd book in the series has just been released. In Dog Bones, Sam's quest to avenge abused animals is threatened when the FBI comes after her on one side and the commissioner wants her dead on the other side. She sort of becomes a bureaucratic sandwich. Will her double life be exposed? Will she be able to protect the animals, her friends, and herself? Check out Dog Bones by Diane Moat everywhere ebooks are sold. And if you haven't started the series yet, start with Doggone, then read Dog Fight, all 3 by Diane Moat, and they're on Amazon, Kindle, and everywhere else that ebooks are sold. J. Traveler Pelton has also been on this show, and she writes the Oberlin series. It's a family. The first in the series is called The Infant Conspiracy, and it is also available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. It starts a few years after rebooting the Oberlins left off. Noel and Violet Oberlin spent their adult careers working special assignments for the U.S. government, a family tradition of service. After 40 years of espionage, all they wanted was a peaceful retirement in the country. Just as it seems that dream might happen, an unplanned series of events forced their overachieving adult children to return home to live with them. All 4 of them driven out of their homes by different aspects of a government that had gone insane. Kai, a geneticist, with Zena, his wife, Gabriel, a bomb expert turned nurse, with their grandson, little Cade, Jasmine, a forensic scientist married to Scott, a CPA, joined their little siblings still living at home. Micah, an autistic savant, and Serena, an artist, and uncovering a secret group of people led by the Ice Lady, whose main goal appears to be to take the Earth's population down from 7 billion to 50 million within the next 10 years. Having infiltrated the governments of most developed countries and released an airborne anti-fertility virus, the Brotherhood succeeded in forcing a 0 fertility rate. In the meantime, the economy of the U.S. tanked. The government sells all citizens who have debt into slavery within a system so harsh that civil disorder breaks out. Serenity Retreat Center is forced to become a slave labor camp, and the families compelled into special service to save the center, their tribe, the United States, and humanity from extinction. If you thought retirement was simply about money, this book will change your mind. Then we have, ladies and gentlemen, a wonderful, 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 wonderful short story book. I have read this book, and the author of this book is on the show tonight. Author John Isaac Jones has written a short story book called Alabama Stories. It's only on Kindle. It is told through the perspective of a 12-year-old boy in rural Alabama way back in the day. I'm thinking late 50s, early 60s. And if you've never lived or been to rural Alabama, even today, There are some places that you don't want to go after dark. But he tells these stories through the perspective of a 12-year-old boy, and they're entertaining, they're educational, and they are fun to read. So check them all out on Kindle. And with that being said, tonight's guest, like I said, is author John Isaac Jones. He is a retired journalist currently living at Merritt Island, Florida. For more than 30 years, John I, as he likes to be called, was a reporter for media outlets throughout the world. These included local newspapers in his native Alabama, the National Enquirer, News of the World in London, the Sydney Morning Herald, and NBC Television. He is the author of 5 novels, short story collections, and 3 novellas. That was as of yesterday. Now he's up to 20-something because I went and did a deep dive on him, and I'm going, some of these things I've never even heard. So we're going to talk about them tonight. John, thank you for coming back so quick. I mean, we didn't even get to, I don't even think we talked about any of these the last time, but one.
Yeah, well, actually, we touched on a couple of 3, but we didn't go into in depth on any of my other books. That's particularly my short stories or novellas. We mostly talked about my novels.
That is very true. So before we start talking about all these wonderful, wonderful books that I have to download, what have you been doing the last few weeks? I know you've been selling books like crazy, but what else have you been doing?
Well, actually, about the last 3 months has been screenplays. Now, I've got one novella, which is Timbo Makaburi, a story about this wild game hunter, which it's about a 160-page novel, which I converted into a screenplay. Then I had the Duck Springs Affair, which we talked about extensively on this show the last time, which I got into a screenplay. I'm hawking them on the screenplay side, and now I'm working on a screenplay for The Hand of God. It's kind of a different ball game writing a screenplay than it is a book because film is a totally different medium, and you have to make adjustments and add characters and leave out scenes and tighten up your climaxes in a ways with film that you don't ever think about in a novel because film is a very fluid medium. It moves very quickly. The plot points develop much more quickly in the film than they do in a novel, and it's a different approach. You have to be able to tell the story in 20 pages or less, and let the director have creative license with it too. That's correct. That's when the final product isn't nearly as much of yourself as it would be if you had written a novel. Because the director, and of course, you got all these different people that are making contributions to the film, the actors and the sound people, even the cinematographers. But yeah, it's a whole different ball game writing a movie than it is sit down and write a novel.
And it's also more hair-pulling. Years ago, a friend of mine and I wrote a screenplay to Tangled Minds, which was the second book I put out. And trying to condense that, I think it's 300-page book down to 20 pages and still get the gist of the story out was insane. Oh
yeah. It's you have to take it and compact it down. You can, and The Hand of God, the book, the novel itself was 280 pages, and I've got right now I've trimmed it down to about 130 pages in a screenplay. But when I send it out there to producers, they're going to say, this is too long. They're looking for about 120 pages or something like that. So I've got my work cut out for me. But, I've been reading a lot of screenplays. And, screenplays is a lot like novels. You learn by reading. You learn to write novels by reading novels, and you learn to write screenplays by reading screenplays. And I've been reading all the screenplays. And, of course, it helps me in my adaptations from novels to screenplays.
Do you find that it's difficult to chop up that novel into a screenplay? Because, like you say, you have to leave out certain scenes. You have to condense certain things. You have to sometimes even rework a character because that director's interpretation is like a train wreck. You get 10 people looking at a train wreck, you get 10 different interpretations. That director is going to interpret that entire thing totally different from the way you wrote it.
Yeah, you see, in a novel, you can report things. You can't report anything in a film. You got to show it. I mean, film is a visual medium, and anytime that you're going to convey information to a film goer, you do it in a different way than you do in a novel, because the first thing that a film goer wants to see is to have something shown for them, and then the next thing they want to see is they want to hear something about the story, and then the third time they want to hear it in dialogue. That's the reason why you'll find a lot of screenwriters that they put everything in dialogue, because it's the easiest way. But if film is done right, you need very, 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 very little dialogue, because film is such a visual medium. And of course you have to, like I say, you have to get information to the audience in a totally different way in a film than you do in a novel. It can be reported in a novel. You can tell in a novel, but you can't do that in a screenplay. It's all got to be right there for the. And again, the average moviegoer, they want to hear everything either by ear or eye before they hear any dialogue about an explanation of the story or a character or that sort of thing. But a lot of times in writing a screen, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you finish.
Well, I mean, like I say, and you take a novel, you have to sometimes have to add a character. You have to add a scene in order to tell the same thing in a film that you're trying to tell in a novel. And it's like anything. The more you do, the better you get at it. But I think it's kind of like novels. I mean, nobody ever nails down the perfect way to write a novel, and nobody ever nails down the perfect way to write a screenplay, because you can take the same story, but for the different medium, it's got to be told totally different ways. Totally different ways.
And would it also be fair to say you can take the same novel and write 12 different screenplays and get 12 different perspectives when it comes out on film?
Well, your story is your story. A story. I mean, I guess you could take, a novel that had 10 or 12 standalone stories in it, and make 12 films out of it. But a single story, you'd have to shoot enough film to tell the whole story. The beginning, the middle, and the end. Because you see, there's a different everything in film is chopped up. Whereas in a novel, you can kind of stretch things out. You can't do that in film. You got to hit them hard, you got to hit them fast, and you got to hit them regularly. A novel is a much more leisurely trip. Whereas in a film, you get a lot of information thrown at you hard and fast.
And sometimes you're sitting there watching a film, you're going along, and then all of a sudden there's a 180 turn, and you wonder what the hell happened, because there's a disconnect, because they had to leave so much out to get to the end of the film that you wonder what happened in between.
Oh, yeah. Of course. On the other hand, that's part of the beauty of film. You can tell a story a lot faster with film than you can with a novel with verbiage. But on the other hand, it's a lot trickier, because the arrangement of the plot points have to be differently, have to be moved around differently, because the reader's mind and eye and ear, they follow the story differently. In a film, it's, like I say, it's much more chopped up, and yet in its own way. And we all know this. There was once a time when they made movies without any sound. You pretty well understood them. And so it's very fluid. In fact, some of Charlie Chaplin's silent films, I think, are probably some of the greatest films ever made. And
because his was all of Charlie Chaplin's language was facial expressions and body language.
Right, exactly. Physical humor, right. And he could find some of the most marvelous physical humor and some of the most ill-begotten circumstances. Of course, he spent a lot of years in vaudeville in London before he ever started making film.
And what I find
sorry,
interesting, that's okay. What I find interesting is that if you go back and look at old classics, old black and white classics, and you go back and look at old actors that started off in vaudeville or were in theater or were Shakespearean actors, and then they moved to film, their acting has so much more depth than the actors that are coming up now, because they had to learn how to act with their face, with their body, with their emotions, where now they just get in front of a camera and spit out words. There's no realism in the method of acting. If you look at people like John Huston, Angelica Houston, they all had that. They knew how to act. Betty Davis, another one, an absolute master at making you believe she was the person that she was portraying.
Right. Well, you see, back in the days of John Huston, back in those days, they didn't have, in the 40s and 50s, back in those days, they didn't have the special effects, they have nowadays. And they didn't have all the technological advances they had for sound. See, nowadays, I just don't go to the movies anymore because most of the movies you go to are just action films, jumping off of buildings and explosions and car chases, back in John Huston's days, you had to have a story that touched the heart, that brought out your feelings. Nowadays, it's whether or not the main question is whether or not the hero is going to get killed when he jumps out of the helicopter. That's not very interesting to me. I want to know what's touching the heart of my characters. I want to feel something. I don't want to know just whether or not the main character is going to survive. The next car chase.
And the bloodier the scene, the better the quote unquote the better the movie. To me, that's not telling a story. That's just throwing a bunch of red paint up against the wall and hoping it sticks.
Right. It has no substance. It's just it's just there's just nothing to it.
Another one of my favorites, Sean Connery. It doesn't matter what Sean Connery plays in, he is believable.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, well, those Ian Fleming novels, those Sean Connery, there was just enough weirdness to them. They could take action and make it really good. But some of the things that make it nowadays is just, it just really goes above and beyond.
Then they complain about the movie costing so much to make. Well, go back to old school. Go back to having your actors become the character. Take on the persona of the character. Put that character around them. Believe they are the character. Use the facial expressions. Use the body language. Use the emotions that the old-time actors brought to the stage. They were believable. The scariest movie I've ever seen in my entire life was Psycho.
Right.
And then when I saw the autobiography about Alfred Hitchcock, I understand now why it took me. Some days I don't even like to take showers. I take baths because I don't want that shower curtain between me and somebody coming in the bathroom. And it scared Janet Leigh so bad when Alfred Hitchcock did that movie. That scene, because Alfred Hitchcock is the one that did the slashing scene of the curtain,
right?
Because he was trying to show the male actor what he wanted, and the cameras were rolling, and all you see is this knife going into the shower curtain, and that to me has always been the scariest movie I have ever seen.
Well, one of the most private moments that we human beings expect to have in our lives is when we take a shower or taking a bath.
Yes,
exactly. We like to feel perfectly safe and at home when we're taking a shower. That there's there's no danger nearby, you know. And I think that's one of the things. And I have to say that every time I take a shower, there's a flash of Janet Leigh in that shower stall.
Yep, you are exactly right. And, and she said she never got over that scene because it was so frightening. And you didn't see the blood and the guts and the gore, and it was done in black and white. All you saw was the shadow of that hand and the shadow of that knife going into that shower curtain, and it was so visual.
Right. Yeah, that's a great movie. You know, Hitchcock, he makes them. I haven't written. I've got in my head. I have not written. I have got a novel for a horror story in my head, The Turn of the Screw, but I want to take it in totally different directions than Henry James ever did. I've never written. I've written some horror short stories. You know, I wrote The Surrogate. I wrote Going Home. You know, Going Home is a story of a man going on a trip before he dies. The story is called A Dead Man's Dream. I've got a couple, 3 horror stories, but I've never written a full length horror novel. It'd be interesting to see how I handle it. I think it'll be fun, but I haven't done it yet. But I've written several horror short stories. You know, Going Home and The Surrogate.
We're going to talk about those in just about 4 minutes. If you'll give me time to run these ads, we're going to get into those because some of those I hadn't even seen until I pulled up your website and I went, oh, I got to read this one, Where did this one come from? Bear with me. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Off the Chain. I am your host, Yvonne Mason, with my guest, the wonderful, wonderful John Isaac Jones. I am so privileged and honored to know this man because I can just sit and talk to him for hours about things because he is so amazing. We will be right back and continue this conversation, so stay tuned.
Horses See Ghosts, a new poetry book by Gannat Wise. It's been called Poetry for the Rest of Us. Amazon.
Do you have cougars on your porch swing? Are horses your new best friend? Do your nicest shoes get buried knee-deep in snow as your toes turn blue? Are you bothered by wolves at your woodpile? No, not that kind of wolf. Join wildlife artist and author Nancy Quinn and her family as they discover an exciting new life in Go West, Young Woman, a true Montana adventure. Available online and in bookstores. Or visit QuinnWildlifeArt.com for a personalized signed copy. Critics agree, it's a hoot.
A struggling city, its beloved baseball team, an antique camera, and photos from that camera that bear an image from the pit of hell, an entity only a select few can see. Journalism professor Buddy Cullen is determined to track this demon down. But who is the hunter and who is the prey? And who will be the next target of mankind's mortal foe? Mortal Foe, available at Amazon.com.
Hi, this is Winona
and Jade inviting you to join us
and our wonderful guest on the And I Thought Women's Cave podcast
on Blog Talk Radio to learn more about our books, the And I Thought series, and
the Misfit Guides. They're available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNobles.com.
Or just to see what your ladies are up to, you can find all of that out on www.andwethought.com.
So peace and love from Winona
and Jade and our books.
Girl,
you know,
silly.
You silly.
Remember,
did you write that? That's funny.
Remember to visit us at andwethought.com.
The year, 1888. The place, London's East End. Dead and mutilated bodies are popping up all over, from Stamford to Whitechapel. Jack the Ripper is leaving his mark, and the city's on edge. Yvonne Mason is back with a tale of murder and millinery. The Rhodes Hat Factory is booming while the body count rises. Why now? How are these hats connected? Has the Hatter gone mad? Mad Hatter from Yvonne Mason. Available now on Amazon.com.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, with Off the Chain. I'm your host, Yvonne Mason, with my wonderful, wonderful guest, author John Isaac Jones. And we're talking about screenplays and short stories. And the man has written a whole fistful of short stories I didn't even know were out there. And we just got started talking to him when we had to go pay a few bills. So let's back up a little bit, John. Talk about Going Home. That one caught my eye.
Going Home is the story of a man who knows he's going to die, but there's a few things he wants to do before he dies. Okay, and in the story, I'm going to give it away, I guess, when I do this. He goes back to his hometown. He sees his old friends at the pool hall. He sees his old girlfriend. He lives through some memories of his childhood. He remembers through some days when he was a thief. But the thing he wanted to do was to go back to his mama's house and see his mother and eat some of her fried peach pies. And that's the last thing he did. Have you ever read a short story called An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge by Ambrose Bierce?
No, I have not.
Story. It was a story. It's very similar to that. That story's been called A Dead Man's Dream. It's what goes through a man's mind the moments before he dies. But this probably, at least it's my favorite short story. I've got some bites on it as a screenplay. As a screenplay, it only turned out to be about 31, 32 pages. But I've had some bites on it. I've had several people who wanted to read it. Just day before yesterday, a guy called me and wanted to read it. So hopefully it sells. It hadn't yet, but hopefully it'll sell. But it's a horror story. It's just about what goes through a man's mind, what goes through a man's mind before he dies, just the few moments before he loses consciousness.
Then you wrote Prejudice, which I found interesting. I have not read it yet, but just reading the synopsis, it grabbed me.
Well, when I was a kid growing up in North Alabama many, many years ago, I remember that story was written on a true incident. I was 5 years old, and of course this was the height of the Jim Crow era. And this young black man came to our house to dig a ditch for my father, and that whole story grew out of that incident. It's a story of how that that black people were treated in the South in the late 40s and early 50s. It was way before civil rights and and the marches and all that. But it's a story that a young boy that's trying to figure out in his mind. He watches the way his father treats this black man, and he wonders why this goes on, why he treats this black man different than he did white people. And this little boy is just asking questions because this guy, this black man, outside of having the black skin, he seemed in every other way he seemed white to this little boy. He hadn't heard all the stories about black people and blah 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 blah. So this little boy is trying to figure out why his daddy is treating this black man so differently. You draw a lot of parallels between, basically it's just this little boy watches his daddy, and he just doesn't understand why his father's man differently than he would, white people. It's actually, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I'm sure that there are a lot of life's lessons in there, because even today there still is a prejudice against people that we don't understand.
That's right. People that are different from us, yeah.
Now, Thanks PG, what is that one about?
Thanks PG is the story I wrote about my days as a reporter with the National Enquirer. It's the memoirs of my story working for the tabloids. It's the places I went, the stories I covered, I covered stories about Marlon Brando. I covered the O.J. trial. I covered stories about Elvis. I met Elvis a couple of times. I covered Jimmy Carter. I covered George Wallace. And then when I was in California 10 or 12 years, and I covered, weddings and events and all that sort of thing. So basically, the Things PG is the story. It's a fictional biography of my days as a reporter with the National Enquirer. It's about the way way tabloid stories are put together. It's about the way that they're published. It's the way they're edited. It's just an inside look at tabloid newspapers. A lot of people have a lot of preconceived ideas of what tabloid newspapers are about, but most of them are wrong. They're just preconceived ideas that, the real story of working for the tabloids is a totally different story. It's very, very different. In fact, that's one of my favorites. I got two good reviews on it the day before yesterday. It's
wow.
It's one of my favorite books. Yeah, I like that book. And I've got a lot of friends. A lot of the people that's in the tabloid industry in the United States are in England, and I've had some good reviews out of London on Things PG. Things PG is. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say I'm going to have to download the book. You've got me hooked. That was Alabama Stories. That one got me hooked.
Yeah, well, I hope you like it. Like I say, it's an inside look at the life of a tabloid reporter. The first couple of chapters is my days growing up in Alabama and, working for dailies. But, most of it is the days I worked for GP. See, the title is Thanks PG, but the real person's name was PG. It was GP, who is Generoso Pope. The founder and the publisher of the founder and publisher of the National Enquirer. But all that's explained in the book. It was really fun to write, Yvonne, because you kind of sit back and remember the people and the places and life experiences and people you meet and I'll be totally honest with you, Yvonne. I wouldn't take anything in the world for those years. Those are some of the happiest years of my life, covering, traveling the world and, covering stories and covering the O.J. trial. There'll never, ever be another story like the O.J. trial. Never, ever, ever be another story like the O.J. trial. That was the feeding frenzy of all feeding frenzies, the O.J. trial was. And
it was also the catalyst for 24/7 news now.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Now, you also wrote Standby.
Yeah, that's kind of a little short story there. Standby is a woman who is on standby at the airport, and she meets an old lover, and she talks to him, and she's been wanting to meet this man for 20 years again, but she never had the courage to call him or try to reach him. And she encounters this man, and they have this conversation. And finally, she realizes that she's not only on standby for the plane, but she's been on standby with this man for something like 20 years. So it's kind of a double standby story. It's people that have hopes and dreams, but they never have the courage to reach out and get them. They're just always kind of on the sidelines, just kind of on standby. They're never in the real action. They're just, their whole lives are spent on standby. Are you following me?
Yes, because they don't take that step forward. I have an old adage, you don't know the answer to the question until you ask the question, and most people will never ask the question. So like you said, they live their life on standby. Blood on the salad. What in the devil is that one?
That's when I was a kid growing up in high school. I had a job printing menus at the hotel in my little hometown. There was this ritzy hotel there. And they printed the menus every day. And when I was in high school, I had the job of printing the menus. And that's a story of I have to tell you, this is based on a true story. Every year in the town they had this event. this big event, and all the high muckety mucks would come, all the rich politicians, and and all the big businessmen would come, and if you was anybody, you had to come to this big event. This big event was held every year at this ritzy hotel that I worked at. Well, during 1 year of the event there, the salad lady was cutting up salad, and they like to serve salad, fresh, and so they would make it just before the banquet. And it's a story of this woman that was cutting up the salad. She had these 5 big tubs. She's got to make enough salad to feed 300 people. So she's got all the lettuce, tomatoes, onions, and cucumbers in these big plastic tubs. Well, in the process of cutting up the vegetables, she nicks her finger, and so she puts one Band-Aid on it, and it wasn't enough to stop the bleeding. And she puts another Band-Aid on it, and first thing she knows, she's got about 8 Band-Aids on her finger from where she cut her finger. Okay, so now she's ready to toss the salad. Well, in the process of tossing the salad, she loses the bundle of Band-Aids in the salad. And so she has to go through the entire salad and being able to find the bundle of Band-Aids. And so the hotel owner said, "Well, said we've got to have a salad. We can't just keep the salad." So the owner came in and picked out some pieces of the salad and wiped some blood off of it, and they went ahead and served the salad. It's funny about this. It's a funny thing about stories like that is that some people don't like to talk about things like that, and other people it's just totally hysterical to them. Some of the reviews that I got was something like unpleasant people talking about unpleasant things, but it's funny how that some people are just die laughing, and other people just don't really like it.
Well, they have no sense of humor, but they also understand that this really happens in restaurants.
Oh, it's a true story. And when I in the description for it, I say that if you read this story, you may never again eat another salad, because it's pretty funny, I have to say, if I did write it.
That is hysterical. What about Johnny Daytona?
Well, that's another story. When I was growing up, when I was a kid, when I was 9 or 10 years old, I would go with my father to the pool hall, and I would see guys shooting pool, and anyway, it's a long story of how that the fascination of the game of pool, just helped me. I mean, there's nothing I would rather do than watch this one pool player named Johnny Daytona, who was a professional pool player, play pool. And, about how much, it's actually a game of hero worship. And the plot points of the story traces the evolution of this boy, or the main character, from the time he's about 15 up till he's about the age of 40. And all the times that his relationship, this man would come in and he would play hustler who would come into town. There's a story of one time the hustler came into town, and Johnny Daytona, he pulled a gun on Johnny, and Johnny killed him. And then there's a story when this great hustler come down from Kentucky. And it's actually a story of hero worship about this young kid who is obviously me, is just fascinated by the game of pool, particularly by this one pool player, Johnny Daytona. I won't tell you the end of it, but it's.
Oh, please don't, because I have to buy it.
Yeah, it's really a great little story. I mean, it's a story that's very close to my heart. But I've only got about 4 reviews on it. I don't get a lot of people buying it, although in my heart, it's very close to my heart. Johnny Daytona is.
Then you wrote one called Mother's Day. What is that one about?
Well, this happens on Mother's Day. And this guy, and him and his wife are going to church on Mother's Day. And when you go to church on Mother's Day, if your mother's living, you're supposed to wear a red rose. If your mother is dead, you're supposed to wear a white rose. So this guy, the main character, he goes to this place to buy some roses, and she didn't have no more reds. And this guy was supposed to wear a white rose because his mother was dead, but they didn't have any white roses, so he got a red rose. So he gets back in the car with his wife, and she says, "Oh no," said, "You're supposed to be wearing a white rose, and you've got a red rose." And he said, "Well, that's all she had." And his wife said, "Well," said, "I guess it'll have to do." So their little boy says, "Well, we'll just have to play like that Daddy's mother's alive today." So after he walks out of the drugstore with the roses, he meets his mother. His mother, the spirit of his mother comes up and meet him, and then they have this long talk, and she asks about his health, and you know, he tells her how glad he is to see her, how much he loves her, and how much he misses her, and then she says that, "Well, I got to go back now." And he said, "Go back? Where you going?" You know, and she said, "Well, I've got to go." She said, "They just let me come visit for a while." And it's a story of, I guess, everybody in this world would like to meet their mother again sometime. And it's a story of, you know, the white rose, the red rose is just a symbol for living, you know. So.
Then you wrote The Surrogate.
I'm sorry.
You wrote The Surrogate. That's kind of a wild one right there. The Surrogate's a story about this little town in Georgia where everybody knows everybody, and there's this one woman who is this niece of the guy who's the county coroner, and she meets this guy, and they get married and fall in love, and they decide to have kids, but she finds out she can't have kids, so they hire the surrogate to have a child for them. So she, during the process of him trying to impregnate the surrogate, he elopes with her, and he's gone for something. He was gone for something like 3 or 4 years, and then she's brokenhearted, devastated, and blah 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 blah, and then all of a sudden he shows up again, and he wants to make up with her, and then that's when she gets her revenge on him. Ooh.
And that's
that sounds like
good reviews on it. Had some good reviews on it.
Then I'm looking at this one with this snake with his fangs hanging out. When I saw it, I did a double take. I said, John wrote this? What in the world is this one about?
Well, there's this little boy who's dying, and his parents are killed in a car wreck, and his new caretaker is his aunt, this very cruel, mean aunt. And she comes to the house, and she won't, she is a strict authoritarian. She won't let him, any spills on this tablecloth, or no mud on the floor. Or, she's a very strict. And he likes to collect. He likes to collect reptiles from the swamp. They're right near the Okeechobee Swamp in South Georgia. So, he would get a little turtle, and he'd put it in his room, and she would come and find it and kill it. And then, there was a little frog, and she'd come and kill it. And then finally, he captures the most dangerous snake in the world, the Serpentis saragosi, and he gets his revenge on her. It's
and you said you don't write horror.
Well, I mean, in a way it is, except that's not just outright horror. That's kind of muted horror there. That's kind of, I guess you could call it indirect horror. It's not in-your-face horror. You know what I'm saying?
It is if you're scared of snakes.
Well, it's a great short story. I love that short story. I sold quite a few of them.
Well, let me ask you this. Last time we talked about The Hand of God. And we talked, and it is, ladies and gentlemen, this book is based on a real murder, a double murder that happened here in Florida years ago. Briefly tell the folks about this book, and I wish you would get it in audio so my husband could listen to it. He can no longer read because he's going blind. But I would love for you to get it in audio so he could listen to it. But tell the folks about this, because at that time, the crime was headlined all over the world, was it not?
Oh yeah, oh absolutely, yeah. I mean, when the trials was covered by all the major newspapers of the United States and overseas, particularly in London and Paris. This is the story of the murder of Curtis Chillingworth and his wife Marjorie. He was a circuit judge in Palm Beach County, Florida, and he had some information on this corrupt lawyer that was in the town, and this lawyer was afraid that he was going to use this information and get him disbarred and cause him to lose his license. So he hires this Brazilian and this young black guy to kill him. Well, he actually hires the Brazilian first, and then the Brazilian brings in this young black guy with it to commit the murder. And then when they get ready to commit the murder, they take a boat and they go to the back of this judge and his wife, to the back of their beach house, and they take them out and they put them in the boat and they take them out to the Gulf Stream. The Gulf Stream is just a little ways off of the Atlantic coast of Florida, and they put diving weights on them, and then they drop them off in the ocean. Now his wife was, she was a tiny little woman, and they put diving weights on her, and she went down. But her husband, who had been a Navy man, they got ready to put diving weights on him and throw him overboard, and he jumped overboard on his own. And so they started chasing him with a boat, and this guy was swimming in the ocean trying to get away from him. And so they finally they catch up with him and they shoot him with a shotgun, and then they go back. Well, over the next few weeks, what this young black man, what Bobby Lincoln had done, this is based on a true story. The names that I'm using here are from the real life.
Right.
He starts feeling guilty about it. And so he starts having these dreams and these nightmares, and he goes to the beach and he sings gospel songs, and he starts basically just going crazy until he finally, he finally just confesses to it. He can't believe what he's done. He hates what he's done, but he can't change it now. So he confesses, and they put him in jail. So while he's in jail, he meets this man named Bags Calhoun. Bags Calhoun is a man that he brings a little cart around to give books to all the inmates so they can read in prison. Read in the jail. So Bobby Lincoln, while he's waiting on his trial for murder, he starts reading books. And one thing, and he really broadens himself and he educates himself, and then about 2 weeks before the trial, he learns that they don't have a body. The prosecutor, they don't have a body, what they call a corpus delicti. And because they don't have a body, the prosecutor goes to Bobby and tells him, look, says I hadn't got a case here if I hadn't got a body, so I need a witness. And said, if you'll be the witness for the prosecution, I'll give you immunity. Of course, they did some negotiating with him, but anyway, he got immunity if he would testify for the state. So he testified for the state. They win the case against the guy that hired him originally, and I'm fast forwarding here. And then after it was over, they have got the bad guys in jail. And there's a final shootout after the bad guys learn what he's done. He has destroyed their little playhouse. So they come looking for him, and there's a shootout. And at the end, he marries anyway, it has a happy ending. It has a happy ending, and he goes to Chicago and gets rich, and he establishes a college for black people. It's a very inspiring story in a lot of ways, I think. When I was in computers, for about 12 years, from 2000 to 2012, and there was a little black man named Clayton Vandiver who I dedicated the book to. Clayton Vander was probably the smartest man I ever knew. He was, as a tech. I mean, he not only understood hardware and software, but he understood networking. And you could go to him and you could ask this man just about anything. This was for a satellite company in Atlanta. And Clayton could not only could he answer it, would he have the right answer, but he could deliver it. He could impart that information in such a way that there was nothing threatening or intimidating about him. Some people who are techs can know information, but the way that they try to communicate it, it seems intimidating, but not Clayton.
Uh-huh.
Clayton was the kind of man. He not only had the answer, but he knew how to deliver it to you in a friendly, non-threatening manner. And
well, guess what, my friend?
What's that?
Our hour's almost up.
All right. Okay.
So quickly, tell folks where you can be found, and will you come back?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
We'll just go to John Isaac Jones' Amazon page. You'll see that I've got 20 books in audio. I've got 26 in ebooks, and I've got something like 8 with Create Space as paperbacks. And Yvonne, thank you so much for giving me a chance to talk about my books. Okay, thank you so much.
Oh, honey, you had me spellbound. I read Alabama stories, and I can't say enough about them. It put me in rural Alabama. Because, I've been over there many, many times. So I understood that book perfectly well.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen,
right.
Go and get John Isaac Jones's books because they are absolutely marvelous. They're great reads. You will fall in love with this man's writing because he knows how to write. He knows how to tell a story. So go and no, you can't go now because we're not done yet. When the show goes dark, you can go. But as you all know, I bring on the most interesting people, and I appreciate them so much. All of y'all are what make this show what it is, John, and it means so much to me. I could just sit here for an hour and not say anything and just listen to you talk about how you got where you are and all the stories that I know that you've got from doing journalism for 30-some-odd years. We'll have to do a show on that.
Okay. That's happy with me. I always enjoy on your show.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we'll do a show on that, ladies, and we'll talk about his journalism days and talk about, he did cover the OJ trial, and that was a trial within itself. But until next time, which we start off next Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time with a whole new show, I want to say thank you to John for being here because I just love to listen to him talk about his books and I just love to listen to him talk, period. He's so interesting. And he is coming back. He is a regular on the show, ladies and gentlemen. But as you all know, there are several things that I say at the end of the show. One of those things is people will forget what you look like. They will forget your name. But they will never, ever, ever forget how you make them feel. And if you don't believe it, try it because we're all on a journey. Every one of us is on a journey. And some of us are on a journey that we know what the ending's going to be. And sometimes we just need someone to say, it'll be okay. So remember that when you're out and about and someone doesn't seem to respond to you in a kind way, just be kind to them because you don't know what's going on in their life. Also, if you want to aspire to be great, please don't ask anybody for their permission because they're not going to give it to you. You go out and you just do it. You whether it's garbage collector to rocket scientist, I say this at the end of every show, whatever it is, and you want to be great at it, go out and be great at it. Do not allow anyone to stop you. Encourage your children to be great at whatever it is they want to do. Allow them to be great because that is the key to success. Success is not how much money we make, but it's how much fun we have doing what we do. And you hear the passion in John's voice. Hear the passion in my voice. We are both successful. Are we millionaires? No. Are we going to be? No. But are we successful? Yes. Is it a passion? Yes. Are we happy doing it? Yes. That is the key, ladies and gentlemen, because if you're happy at doing what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. So with that, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for joining us tonight. Thank you, John, for once again mesmerizing me with your stories and your books, because they are absolutely amazing. We will join you all again next Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time when we start another new week of fun-filled and exciting guests. And who knows who will pop up? I never know. And who knows what we'll talk about? I never know. So until next Wednesday night, this is your host, Yvonne Mason, with Off the Chain and my guest, author John Isaac Jones. Go and get his book, and we wish you a good night. We're off the air, John, but you know that I will put this up.
All right, good enough. Hey, thanks for having me. Okay, I always love to chat with you. Okay.
You are quite welcome. And you know, when the show archives, I'll put it up on the page, and I'm going to tag you in it, and you just take it and post it everywhere. And then tomorrow, I'll put it up on all the podcasts. You know, we're on Reverb Nation, and we're also on iHeartRadio now. We're on Spotify too.
Right.
So we're heard everywhere. So
okay,
I will.
Good enough. I hope it helps me sell some books.
It will. Now, it's up until after the first of the year, but I'm going to get you in after the first of the year. By then, you'll have some more stories out.
Oh yeah. So, but don't hesitate to call me, okay?
Okay. If I run into trouble and need a guest, I'll say, John, come be on the show.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
All right, John.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, honey.
All right.
Good night.
Take care.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
It's the two megastars summer mashup. The awesome iPhone on the Rockstar Metro PCS network. Get the iPhone you've always wanted for $0 so you can jam without limits.
It's a hit. Get an iPhone SE on us when you switch. Metro PCS. Coverage not available in some areas, plus sales tax and $10 activation fee. Requires port-in of number not currently active on T-Mobile network or on Metro PCS in past 90 days to an unlimited LTE plan. See store for details and terms and conditions.
The Ram Summer Clearance event is here, and it's time to get to work. And working hard will build you a reputation. Something that the all-new 2019 Ram 1500 prides itself on, too. You'll see it for yourself with the largest available touchscreen in its class. Hurry into the Ram Summer Clearance event for a great deal and get up to 6 months of Apple Music on us.
Class based on light-duty pickups. Visit www.ramtrucks.com/Apple for details. Apple is a registered trademark of Apple Inc. Apple is not a sponsor of this promotion. Ram is a registered trademark of FCA US LLC.